All right. So thank you all so much for being here with us tonight for our program on SpeakOUT TV. I'm Joan Ilacqua. I'm the executive director of the History Project, and we are Boston's LGBTQ+ community archives. If you're not familiar with us and our work, I encourage you to check out historyproject.org. But basically, we document, preserve, and share LGBTQ+ history of Boston, Massachusetts, New England, kind of broadly. And upcoming, I think we have one more event for Pride Month on Monday. So if you're interested in queer history, we're working with the Mass Historical Society to have a panel on more recent LGBTQ+ legal history with perspectives from Arlene Isaacson, lobbyist, Tanya Naslucin from Mass Equality, and Treandre Valentine from the Mass Trans Political Coalition. So if you're in the Boston area, it's hybrid. You can come in person. They usually have a very nice spread at MHS, but also will be online. So before we get started and I turn it over to Ellyn, I just want to say I'm really happy that we could do this event together. I love collaborating with SpeakOUT and SpeakOUT speakers. And just thank you from the History Project to the Mass Cultural Council for supporting the digitization of SpeakOUT TV, which at some point after Pride Month, a copy of which will be shared on our digital archives too. So thank you, Ellyn. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Oh, great, Joan. I know we always love collaborating on things. It's so much fun to do. Good evening, everyone. Happy Pride Month as the spirit of the month continues. SpeakOUT itself, we have a few more engagements to finish off the month as well. So it's been a very busy month. Today is actually SpeakOUT Day, which is kind of fun. Every year we pick a day in June to highlight SpeakOUT's programs and activities, and we do some fundraising. And so today is SpeakOUT Day. I don't know if anyone saw, but we were on the eye opener on Channel 5 this morning, which was really fun to start our day with. So if you don't know, SpeakOUT is a nonprofit speakers bureau for the LGBTQ+ community. We're the oldest one that we know of in the nation. And early on in the organization's history, we worked a lot with schools and colleges with debunking stereotypes about gays and lesbians. And then as our community has gotten much more diverse, so has our organization and our programs. So we really try and do as much as we can to represent the full spectrum of LGBTQ+ community. Now we visit a lot of businesses, organizations, public libraries, just all sorts of spaces to raise awareness. Anyone who is themselves working on creating safer, more supportive, inclusive spaces for LGBTQ+ people. And we train our members in 2 major trainings a year in the spring and fall to tell their personal stories and to answer questions and engage with different audiences. And I always like to mention as well that I really think the whole process of not just the training, but also doing the engagements really affects speakers a lot. They really gain a sense of confidence and just a lot more assurance about their identities and a sense of community connection. And I love seeing that as speakers develop themselves through our work. So tonight, we're going to focus on SpeakOUT TV, which was this kind of amazing local cable access program that was produced by SpeakOUT for 13 years, from 1994 to 2007. And it was presenting information about the LGBTQ+ community to local Boston viewers. And it was kind of a logical extension of the work that we were doing in the community by telling our stories and bringing news about LGBTQ+ lives to a larger audience. And it's really nice. to see some other folks who were involved with SpeakOUT TV here. Valerie and Paul have have volunteered to be part of our panel to talk about it. We're going to introduce them in a little bit. But first, we are going to show a video clip about SpeakOUT TV that we produced for our 50th anniversary back in October. And we showed it then, and we just thought we would show it now to kind of give us a taste of what we're talking about.
Good evening and welcome once again to SpeakOUT TV, a live weekly call-in show here on BNN TV, Boston Cable 9. And basically tonight we're just going to be a couple of gay guys sitting around talking.
Just chatting away.
From 1994 to 2007, SpeakOUT TV was a weekly Boston cable program produced by SpeakOUT members who took turns hosting the program by sharing their own stories, answering questions from callers, and interviewing local guests.
Hi, welcome to SpeakOUT TV. You're watching BNN Live, Channel 9. And tonight I have with me Ellyn Isaacson of the Massachusetts Lesbian and Gay Political Caucus joining me. Thanks.
The Boston Gay Men's Chorus is having a concert this month on the 30th at Symphony Hall.
And the guest
is, drum roll, Leah Delaria, famed comedian and singer.
SpeakOUT TV was a great opportunity to spread the word about community activities.
Saturday afternoon.
In general? Is that like something that's
Well,
part
gay
of the
people know because she's on that Broadway Diva video.
I didn't know that.
Well, we already talked about this. You don't have the Broadway gay gene.
I missed that one. Sex. Just a little bit in the show, huh? Are you guys comfortable with how much sex is portrayed in the show?
I will say that when it first aired, they showed the first two episodes together for an hour and a half, and I was like, whoa, you know.
The program also dealt with LGBTQ plus representation in the media, such as this early discussion of Queer as Folk, which had just premiered in the US in 2021.
Like, oh, this is going too far, this really wasn't necessary, this is great, this is just to get the ratings and blah, blah, blah. But actually, you want to know what? It actually was refreshing to some degree.
From the lesbian perspective, we're like watching and we're going, oh my God, you know. So it's sort of, it was really interesting because we're all sitting going, oh, that's what you guys are doing, you know. You know, using our imagination.
Doing too, if I recall correctly.
So we wait for how many episodes, like 5 or 10 episodes before we even have any lesbians like kissing or some, you know, even touching each other. So I thought that was kind of interesting. You know, so they finally chimed in. And then of course Meoni had an affair. So I think that
was pretty hot.
Right.
And you kind of have to talk to everyone.
SpeakOUT's own work in the community could also be highlighted when speakers shared insights from engagements.
Yep. The big key is to keep everyone engaged, and that's really where the success is. When you start talking only to a specific group, you're going to alienate some of the other group, and then it's really not a success.
So you mentioned communities of courage.
SpeakOUT's other activities in the community could also be discussed, such as the Communities of Courage program that was developed to lessen LGBTQ plus violence and enhance suicide prevention for LGBTQ plus youth.
The premise of Communities of Courage is to address and talk about GLBT suicide and violence prevention. So it's not just whether your community has had an incident, but how to prevent an incident. So if you have had an incident in your school or community, we can talk about ways that you can address it. And if you haven't, we can talk about ways that you can prevent it and make kids feel safer, like in schools, churches, synagogues, etc.
SpeakOUT TV was a source of queer community resources, news, and advocacy for over a decade, and we salute all of the many members who put their time and energy into the program.
Ellyn.
Oh, Ellyn, you're on mute.
Thank you. It's that jazzy music really makes all the difference, doesn't it? Dun, 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 dun. Well, that kind of gives you a taste of the different pieces of SpeakOUT TV. And I did want to mention as well that Don Frateroli is also here, who was also one of the anchors on SpeakOUT TV. I don't know if anyone else would like to reveal themselves as someone who was involved with SpeakOUT TV. But we're going to start just by talking a little bit about with the people who were involved. And how long were you involved for? What got you involved? Were you already kind of involved with media before you did this, and all of that? I'm going to just start with you, Valerie, because you're next to me in the boxes. So why don't you go ahead?
So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I sort of got involved with Speak Out and took the speaker training back in 1996, 1997. And I really jumped at the chance when they said, oh, we're doing TV and we're looking for new hosts. And I just really, so around 1997, 1998 is when I started. And I just thought that it was wonderful because, first of all, we had all this great training from Speak Out, but the media part of the training that the studio did, BNN, the Boston Neighborhood Network, was like the whole morning. It was like 4 or 5 hours where we go into the studio, we would learn about the television cameras, where they place them, about, you know, making an appearance, looking good, smiling, lighting. And then we had a session where they would videotape us. And then we had, of course, the critique session, because back then it was just critique. It wasn't like the pluses and the minuses. And, you know, and you saw yourself and what you look like on television. I mean, it was really kind of wild. So I thought that was really excellent media training and training that I used later on too, in all the marriage work that Jackie and I did. So I think those were the parts that I enjoyed at the startup.
How about you, Paul?
Yeah, I joined Speak Out in early 2000 and learned about the TV program. And I'm a school teacher, and so I'm used to being in front of an audience. And I just thought it sounded really exciting. And I convinced my husband, Tom, to do the training as well. So the two of us went in to BNN, like Valerie mentioned, and we took the training. And it was a really well done training. And they taught us about each of the components of the show. You can be the host, you can be the camera person, you can be the phone operator. And somebody could be the producer, but the producer and the host were usually one and the same. And so then we took turns practicing working with each of those areas. And like Valerie said, you know, we had a chance to view ourselves, you know, after they taped us, to see how we did and, you know, what we might want to change for the future. So yeah, I was there for I think I was there for 5 years doing Speak Out TV, and it was a lot of fun. You know, every Tuesday night at 8:30. It was really exciting.
That's great. Don, how long were you involved?
I was produced and host for about 5 years. And it's funny that Paul's here, because I believe when I first found out about Speak Out was through Speak Out TV. I saw Scott and Grady, and I was like, boy, this is an organization that I really want to be a part of. And then I instantly called, and I was like, I didn't want to wait for the training. So I think Paul took it upon himself to mentor me, to go out and speak to folks before my first training. And then eventually I did enough engagements where I said, you know, I really want to start doing Speak Out TV. And so I you know, it was a blast. It was a really good time. It was a call-in show, but sometimes we struggled to get people to call in, you know, but it was great because we had one time slot that we were live on BNN Live, and then we were taped 5 other times throughout the week. So we got a lot of visibility through the show, and was with it all the way up until the end. I think when I became chair of the organization, I just couldn't do both, but I miss it. It was such a fun time to get people to organize a group of hosts who would take turns, and we'd like talk about ideas and what we're going to do and what kind of guests we want to bring in, and brainstorm around what the next episode would be for the next month or so. We got together. Just an amazing, I had no media training, so I was just kind of winging it, but it was a really, really good time, and a really great way for the organization to spread the word that we had to other people. And I think a lot of people watched us. We didn't get as many calls, but we had people such as the mayor. We had the first gay cadet in BPD. I mean, it was such a wide, amazing people to come on and speak about the gay community and what was going on, and share their experiences. And I miss it. It was a good time.
That's great.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. It dovetails really nicely into a question that Ellen and I developed about the call-in format. And I think, Valerie, we watched a clip where you were the person calling in. How did you kind of deal with having a call-in show like that? Was that one of the tactics to have Speak Out speakers sometimes jumpstart the conversation?
I was always, nervous that no one would call in for my show. So if I was watching a show, because I knew when it was, that would be one of the things. I had the phone number, because we always had the phone number on the bottom. And so, I would watch the show, and then I would try to think of a good question and call in and ask the questions, just to keep it lively. Because I think what happens is when you're sitting there as the host, if you're just talking and talking, and your guests, it can just be very, tedious or boring after a certain amount of time. So the questions, I think, add an element of surprise to it.
Yeah, definitely. Now, do any of you remember ever getting a really negative or offensive call-in question?
We did.
I only had to use the drop button once for the 5 years that I was on. It was actually the episode when I had the first gay cadet, and we think someone else, perhaps in the fire department, called in and really started giving him a really hard time, questioning him and asking him really awkward and tough questions. And we had to politely hit the call cancel button on him. But that was the only time, I think, that I remember where we had to actually drop a caller. But there just that one time where we had negative conversation. Then other people would ramble sometimes, and we want to move on to the next topic and everything like that. But all in all, there were some really good, didn't have any plants. That's a good idea. Should have had some plants to call.
Yeah. And Paul, were you gonna make a comment about the negative thing? Because I think you were talking when we were mentioning it, like how it was good to get a negative comment sometimes.
It was, and actually, during our training at the end, because they trained us about operating the phones, the studio manager said, if you want, we can have a BNN person there at the phones, because we are concerned about your show and that it might attract some negative, hostile comments and questions. And we were like, no, we'll take care of the phone, because we want those people. We want the audience to hear them, because we want a chance to respond. And so they were like, okay, fine, you work the phone and you can handle it your way. Don is right that we had the host had a little kill switch, that if somebody became swearing or inappropriate, we could quickly cut off the caller. But yeah, you would get like when Tom and I were on, some guy called in, and I mean, it wasn't a really bad question to be. He said, okay, which one of you is the man and which one of you is the woman? And the way he said it, it was very derogatory. And but it was, it was a teachable moment, and we responded accordingly and appropriately. We didn't talk about our sexual lives, on television. So things like that happened, not all the time, but every once in a while you'd get somebody who was, they were trying to push your buttons.
Yeah.
Just like in an engagement, right? I mean, that's what we were trained to do. It's how we handle awkward questions and ask us anything, but we choose that we may not talk about certain topics, or our host may not want us to talk about certain topics, but that's how we handle things in engagements, right? When we go out to speak to schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, and places of work. So it's a very similar thing, but on the big screen.
Yeah, just in case. it happens. Joan, how about should we show the clip with Marcia?
I would love to. And the last clip that came through, good for everyone, just to check the technology as we're going.
I saw I had on mine some strange blocks on mine, but
Okay.
it was kind of odd. Does
All
that
right.
happen?
It's because of Zoom, but
Oh, okay.
I will endeavor to make sure it doesn't do that.
Okay. So I just want to mention, this is a little bit of an indulgence of mine. This is Bill Barnard interviewing Marcia Deal, who was a really dear part of the Cambridge queer community, in particular the bi community. And unfortunately, Marcia died from a bicycle accident a few years ago in Cambridge, but she was very special to a lot of people. So when I saw this clip, I thought we would share it.
All right. There you go. And then
as soon as you're you pee, and then they decide just what you're supposed to be. Girls pink and quiet, boys noisy and blue. Don't you think it's a dumb way to choose what you'll do? It's only a wee-wee, so what's the big deal? It's only a wee-wee, so what's all the fuss? It's only a wee-wee and everyone's got one. There's better things to discuss. Boys must use, girls must use makeup, girls' names and girls' clothes. Boys must use sneakers, but not pantyhose. The grown-ups will teach you the rules to their dance, and if you get confused, they say, look in your pants. It's only a wee-wee, so what's the big deal? It's only a wee-wee, so what's all the fuss? It's only a wee-wee and everyone's got one. There's better things to discuss. The grown-ups will watch every move that you make. Boys must not cry. Girls must make cake. It's all very formal and I think it smells. Let's all be abnormal and act like ourselves. Everybody, it's only a wee-wee, so what's the big deal? It's only a wee-wee, so what's all the fuss? It's only a wee-wee and everyone's got one. There's better things to discuss.
Good evening, I'm Bill Barnard. You're watching SpeakOUT TV, and my guest tonight is the lovely and talented Marcia Deal, Cambridge free radical activist, musician, and all-around crazy person.
There's one interesting thing going on, which is what's happening now in the transgender movement is very much like what was happening to the bisexuals about 5 years ago or 10 years ago, which is, for instance, that we were talking about the Lavender Alliance annual Pride Brunch, every year is a proclamation. And the first 2 years they said, yes, we are celebrating, I think it's June is the gay celebrating month anyway, nationally, and we are celebrating Cambridge's gay and lesbian people. So about 1993, a few of us said we want to add bisexual on this proclamation. And we had a huge discussion. This is when things were just getting looked at and discussed, and some with heat and some with light. And they passed it very narrowly. I think it was a typo in one of the versions, and it got through on the proclamation. And several people were very irate. And then the mayor was Alice Wolf, and she had to read it. And she said, well, this is the argument that we are now hearing about transgender inclusion. Well, it won't go by the conservatives if it has that strange new word in it, bisexuals. People just see sex everywhere and AIDS, and so it won't pass. So if you want to have a good strategy, we won't do it. So they decided not to. And then the next year, I think just because I had worked hard and other people were starting to do it all over the country, somebody said, let's put in bisexual, and they said, okay. So now I'm hearing the very, very same thing. We can't put transgender, that just confuses people. Not if you educate them, it doesn't. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really good that it really shows, that was 1999 when that clip was from. And I love it's talking, the gender issue was very big, obviously still. And also, she was making that point about how the community has evolved over time, and how those resistances come up every time that something starts to change in the community. And we've definitely seen those different waves over time. So I think that was interesting. Yeah, Valerie.
Yeah, so what I also found interesting is that, and this didn't happen, it happened several times where our allies actually held us back. In other words, we would have accepted the whole thing failing with the word bisexual, but our allies were like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this,
That's a really good point. Yeah, that happened often.
Right.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Yeah, go ahead, Joan.
I was just going to say, and you're seeing the cycle is continuing on now, especially where the initialism continues to change, and sometimes there's pushback and sometimes there's not, which is really lovely. But I think, yeah, it's very cyclical. I know when we watched the clip in advance, I was like, you could replace any of the identities really, and we'd be having the same conversation right now. So yeah, it's really exciting, I think, to have kind of that time capsule of, here's the conversation we were having in 1999. What's changed and what still hasn't, and where are we going as a movement?
Yeah, true. Anyone else want to comment? Oh, go ahead, Valerie.
Oh, I was just going to say, I remember the whole issue with the Equality Act and why it was eventually shelved was because it didn't include transgender, and that was back in the who was the vice president? Al Gore was vice president at the time, because he was supposedly the 51st vote.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that, because we actually have that clip as well. When you were talking about it because of the Millennium March. Should we show that now, June?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. So let's see if I can get the media player to do what I want it to do. And we will share screen. Oh. All right. One moment for Zoom.
I'll mention that. So one of the reasons we're doing this is because we're digitizing a whole slew of old videotapes, and because we really would like to have these preserved. And so we got a grant from Mass Cultural Council to do this, and to do this as an event. And it's really great to have that support to get a lot of these tapes preserved, but we only have a certain batch already done. So there's a lot more that we haven't digitized yet. And who knows, maybe at another time we would do something else with it. But it's only a select few tapes that have been digitized that we were able to kind of select things from.
All right, and can we see this now, Ellen?
Yes.
Okay. And hopefully
good evening and welcome to SpeakOUT TV. My name is Paul Meoni and I will be your host this evening. With me are two of my colleagues. At my far left is Tom Kidd, who's also my husband. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And in between us is Valerie Fein-Zachary. Valerie, welcome.
Thanks, Paul.
Tonight, our topic is Millennium March on Washington, our review. The three of us had the opportunity this past weekend to participate in some of the events in Washington, D.C. And so we're going to be talking about what we experienced and the different things that we heard and saw. And we welcome our audience. If you went to the Millennium March on Washington, or if you heard about it, or even if you might have any questions about what the march was all about, please give us a call here at the studio. There was a lot of really inspirational speakers, different priests and reverends and rabbis from different denominations, all talking about how their churches and their synagogues were in favor of gay marriages and hoping to further that cause so that someday people like Tom and I, or Valerie and her wife Jackie, will actually be able to get married legally, and not just in the state of Vermont, and then when you leave Vermont, it doesn't matter anymore. It's not a legal contract anymore. We want it to be binding anywhere we go.
I think that, if I can jump in.
Sure,
I think
please.
that that was a really good part of the weekend, was the focus on the families that were there and a focus on the rights that we've gained, small rights in Vermont now with the civil union bill, which was signed into law by the governor last week, and also the fact that we're still a little bit behind. We haven't gotten the Non-Discrimination Act passed in Congress yet, and we haven't gotten the hate crimes bill passed in Congress, because those seem to be the footing that we need in order to then start working on same-sex partner legislation in town and in Congress in Washington. So I think some of these events were really geared for that, and the wedding was particularly geared to focus on our families.
And you know, Tom pointed out to me that the last time that the Non-Discrimination Act came up, we only lost by 1 vote.
Right.
It was like 50 to 49, and one of the senators didn't vote.
Right.
Or that might have been, wasn't there a senator missing at one point?
He had a family obligation that kept him from voting.
Oh, okay.
But that was supposedly going to be the great vote that Al Gore was going to cast in our favor, and he didn't get a chance to do that.
Oh, because it would have been 50-50.
It would have been 50-50. But the problem at the moment is that since the House is controlled by the Republicans, we're not able to get the Non-Discrimination Act back on the table for a vote. And we all came back from Washington to show that again with our toys and bumper stickers for my car. I picked this one up, Vote Democratic, with the rainbow flag. So I think that's one of the things also that was probably a second major focus of the weekend, was that we have to get out and vote.
Right.
And that gay and lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered people are really going to be a very large voting bloc this election in November. Some people predict as high as 6%, which is really what we were in '96 as a community. So I think that there's a potential for us to be even as high of a voting bloc as 8 or even possibly 10% of the population,
right.
which is what we've been saying all along, about 10%.
Sure.
So it'll be very interesting to see what our polls show this November.
What do you think, Valerie, looking at that? Do you
Well,
remember
which
all
part?
that?
My youth, my haircut, my earrings. I don't know, but it is really amazing to see, that this issues, that we were working on so hard. I mean, it took so long because over time we finally got 2003. I think it was the Lawrence v. Texas. Was overturned the sodomy laws, so then we could have marriage rights in Massachusetts in November 2003, when the court case kind of came through, and so we're seeing now in our society now all the anti-LGBTQ plus bills, especially targeted to the transgender community. And also the language evolved. I heard myself say transgendered community when it should have been transgender community. So I think that's now where we are. I mean, it's just amazing how many bills have been introduced to suppress a community. That we just had a major victory also this past week, where the was it Arkansas?
Yeah.
Just the judge in Arkansas overruled the ban on care for transgender people, and so this is like huge.
It is. I know, it was so interesting. We're still trying to vote Democratic, and you don't get enough done when the Republicans are controlling the House. So same old thing.
I did want to add one thing that for people who are from Massachusetts and have been for over 20 years now, the move to secure same-sex marriage, there was a training from the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force. I believe it was at Suffolk University, and I went, others went, and Barney Frank was there. And he was, we were saying how, oh, we're going to work hard and we're going to defeat this initiative, and because we didn't have the votes. If this went to the people of Massachusetts, they were going to vote for the amendment to ban same-sex marriage. We knew it. It couldn't go to the people. We had to stop it. And he goes, make no mistake, this is going to the ballot. the ballot box, you know, and he kept saying that. And we worked our butts off, and the citizen initiative petition, which only needed 50 votes out of 200 to go forward to the citizens of the Commonwealth. That initiative petition was the last one, and I think it was in 2007, and it failed. They could only get like 48 votes, and they needed 50. And that initiative never went to the ballot. And we were, and still are, so grateful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great piece of history. Okay. So Joan, did you have any other questions you wanted to get in there? Or would you like me to?
I was going to make a crack about Barney Frank being in the news this past week.
Oh,
But we don't have to go. Oh, he was on right-wing television. We don't have to go there. We shouldn't go there. But yeah, I think it's really a window again into what was going on in the early 2000s. But also, I mean, I was a teenager when this was happening, and now working with LGBTQ plus youth who have no idea how much work and how much time all of this took, especially in this moment where we are facing so much legislative attempts to roll back protections and banning books and banning care for transgender people and everything that's going on right now across the country. I think it's actually really amazing to hear the conversations that you were having in 2000, kind of on the precipice of so much change. I think it's actually a very hopeful message to have. So that's not a question, that's a comment, but
it makes me so, you know, how we had wondered of those of you who were anchors, because, you know, right now, a lot of us are afraid of what's going on and of being, sometimes being so public, and the fear of a backlash against people individually. And you were all sharing a lot of information when you were doing your program, and your face, obviously, your name, things about your personal life. Did any of that ever result in anything negative happening to you, or just wondered if that was something that had come up?
I think I personally know, for me, we did try to ensure we publicize events that happened that were in the public eye, and we had tried to get people on the show to talk about them. But, you know, personally, you know, I never received, outside the show, never received nothing but positive feedback about the show and the messaging and you know, but then again, I think that most of the feedback I got back was from the community who was watching, not necessarily outside the community. So that it never impacted outside the show or anything like that. It's interesting that and it didn't, you know, and I started doing the show, I think it was around 2003 and 2004, but it never like, in the BNN, it was such a welcoming environment. They really were both the shows before us and after us were, and the station itself were just so welcoming, you know, and we were above the transportation building is where our headquarters is, where we taped the show. And it was all on VHS, which is interesting that you took those VHS tapes and digitized them, which is awesome to create such an amazing piece of history and the people we had on our show. So, looking forward to see that as well.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Ellyn, you ask a very important question, because I think that fear of violence in today's society is very real. As we hear every other day of a mass shooting and people not celebrating, but remembering and honoring the people who've been killed in mass shootings, you know, in the LGBTQ community and other marginalized communities, that I actually, because I was at Pride this year, and so I actually thought to myself, what would happen? Where would I go if there was something that happened here? Which was the first time that I had thought that in really decades. So I think that that is something that I hope doesn't keep young people away from coming out to Pride events or going out to a bar or going and being with, you know, their friends and the community. I really hope that that's true, that people don't stay home because they're afraid.
Yeah, I've heard other people say that about Pride too. Even I know my partner mentioned that too, about thinking about, you know, what would we do if somebody did do something violent at Pride. And just as a side note to Speak Out, that we now, when we do public facing events, we're very conscious of that. And we speak to our hosts about having a security plan when we do that. And I haven't had to do that before, but in the last 6 months, I've had to talk, more than 6 months now, of having to talk to libraries and other places when we have public events. So yeah, it's very, very sad that we're in that place. So
I did want to share, like you talk about negative reactions. I only had one positive reaction, and it was from one of my fellow teachers at school. She lives, at that point, she lived in Boston, and she was watching BNN, and she was watching the show, and I was on as a host, and she goes, "Hey, that's that math teacher at school." So she came in the next day and she said, "I saw you on TV." And you know, she was very supportive.
So you were a celebrity overnight.
That
Cool.
math teacher.
Yeah. Well, we have one more clip we were going to show, and then we'll get to some more. If folks have questions, you'll have a chance to ask us questions. So one more clip, and this is more like along the idea of media representation that we talked about, where people, you know, earlier you saw them when we were talking about Queer as Folk. This is a little thing about Will and Grace, and yeah, it'll speak for itself.
I'll take one of my friends who send internet nonsense email, and this is what led me to want to bring this topic up. So hang in there, bear with me for a minute, because 2 letters were sent to me and pertaining to the Will and Grace show. Some of you may have gotten this already. For those of you that haven't, just bear with me while I read it to you, because this is where we're going to take off after this point. So letter number 1. Okay, it's from Focus on the Family, their public policy, youth and gender specialist, Mr. Mike Haley. By the way, Focus on the Family focuses on the family as long as you're not gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender. It focuses on the rest of the family. Or if you happen to be the sister or daughter or parent or grandparent or grandson of somebody who's gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, God forbid, they don't focus on you and everyone else. So here's his letter to the Will and Grace NBC television network, to Mr. John Canale. Dear Mr. Canale, I'm writing to request a meeting with you regarding a recent episode of Will and Grace. The show in question grossly misrepresented thousands of individuals struggling to come out of homosexuality. As a former gay man and now a national spokesman and expert on homosexuality and youth issues for Focus on the Family, one of the country's largest organizations who, amongst other things, assists gays and lesbians who desire to be heterosexual, I know firsthand how frustrating and painful it is to be mocked by those who haven't taken the time to find out what this process is all about. I'm specifically talking about references in the show to former homosexuals and those wrestling with their sexual identity as freaks, self-loathing closet cases, morally wrong, and members of cults. Nowhere in this episode are we portrayed as honest men and women seeking help. You may vehemently disagree with this position, but I at least like the opportunity to sit down with you and talk about it. Our conversation may not change your mind about the possibility of coming out of homosexuality, but at the very least it will put a real face behind the caricature you depicted on primetime TV. Sincerely, Mike Haley. Now, there's a letter, and I can't say for certain that this is handwritten by Mr. Mike Haley, but this is the letter in response to Mike Haley from John Canale of The Will and Grace Show. Dear Mr. Haley, I received your letter dated June 9th and was very interested in your point of view. The issues you raised were the very same ones that we on the Will and Grace writing staff debate on a daily basis. Our decision to present the story on the ex-gay ministry was solely in the interest of creating the most comedic episode possible, and it certainly was not our intention to offend you in any way. But come on, Mike, even you have to admit that fags trying to pretend they're straight is pretty darn funny. In response to your request for a meeting, well, I think I can read between the lines on that one. I'm about 6'1", brown hair, green eyes, and I'm into rollerblading, baking cookies, and cleaning up afterwards. My dislikes include game playing, negative attitudes, and condoms. If any of this interests you, I can be found every Sunday at the Brunch and Beer Bust at the Motherlode in West Hollywood. I do hope you show because, like you, I'm an expert on homosexuality. And in my expert opinion, this hard-to-get thing you're playing is hot, hot, hot. Respectfully, John Kennelly. So this is what I'd like to discuss tonight. If you have seen this letter, if this brings up any reaction to you on a whole number of issues, ex-gay ministries, on the show, on people who are trying, quote-unquote, to come out of homosexuality, people who are brave enough to accept and get on with their lives and accept who they are and look for that support and love from the others around them.
I love that. Isn't that great? And Scott does such a great job with that. Yeah. Any thoughts about that? Just kind of that slice of meat of, you know, Will and Grace was such a big show for our community for quite a while. Any thoughts on that?
We had I had as a guest, I had Gay Jim from Kiss 108. I don't know if you remember him. He was a very popular gay. I forgot what his role was on Kiss 108, but very, very, very popular. And so people were asking through comedy, right? And so people would always wonder, you know, is that the right representation? Because the group at Maddie in the Morning and Kiss 108, it was a comedic show, and he represented the gay staff member in a comedic way. And people always questioned, well, is that the right representation of the gay community? And what we talked about on the show was that comedy really can open doors, and it could really start a dialogue that it may not happen on this serious note. So it's interesting how people get the word out. It's interesting how people share their ideals and beliefs, and it could be serious. It could be comedic. It's interesting, and that's I think through each host and who produced a show had a different way of bringing up topics and a different way of discussing, and that was obviously a great way to create a dialogue, in which we were trying to do, right? Is create a discussion, have people call in and have a discussion. So to me, that's it's a personal choice.
Yeah.
And Scott is very funny. He's always very funny, you know, so his shows, you never knew what was going to happen. That was a great show.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting. Like, some of that and some other clips made me think about the way language it changed. Like, I hope nobody's offended if I use the reference that he said about, you know, fags trying to be gay is really funny. Excuse me, fags trying to be straight is really funny. And we would never use that language now. I mean, it's very rare that you wouldn't say that in a program or anything now. Still, some people may use it casually amongst friends in a certain context, but not like that, not presenting something. And it like, when I heard him say it, I was like, whoa, it just caught me by surprise. And I saw that in a couple of clips where people would say things. I'm like, wow, we would never say that like that again anymore. So I thought that was interesting just to see that evolution of language and change like that. So does anyone have any questions to ask our lovely anchors? Anything about the history of SpeakOUT TV or the experience of SpeakOUT TV? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, was SpeakOUT the same organization as the Speakers Bureau?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The Speakers Bureau, their name evolved several times and became SpeakOUT. Yeah, Deb.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, when the entire collection is digitized, will it live in the digital Commonwealth? I mean, where is it going to be available?
Right. We're hoping we are going to house it with the History Project. We also hope to have some of that on our own YouTube channel. We probably won't put it all up there, but we'll probably put some clips on there. We'll keep a copy for posterity and with the History Project. So that will be an accessible archive.
And hopefully with Digital Commonwealth, we have, not to be too in the weeds about the archives process of sharing things online, but we have our stuff in our digital repository in Omeka. Someday we will make the DPLA hub, the Digital Commonwealth hub, ingest that. We haven't had them do it yet, but we're members and it'll get up there someday. So yeah.
I hope you can find the episode where there was a time when the SpeakOUT board faced a vote of dissolving the nonprofit, and I went back and found one of our founders, David Peterson, and he was nice enough to come back out of retirement. And we did a wonderful job of coming back and telling the story of how important SpeakOUT was to the current board and why we should continue the fight. And we had an episode of SpeakOUT TV where we had Bill, Scott, myself, and David, who's has passed since, on SpeakOUT TV, which was a really remarkable memory that I remember from one of the fantastic episodes. And Ellyn, probably one of the tapes that I gave you way back a few for time, and I hope that episode is still around to digitize, because he was an amazing man, and a person who not only was a founder of SpeakOUT but saved SpeakOUT when in our time of dissolution. So really cool episode. I hope we can find.
That's really interesting, Don. I have not seen it yet.
Okay.
But hopefully it's going to be in another batch that we'll be digitizing. Thank you for mentioning that, because I'll keep an eye out for that. Yeah, David saved the organization at least twice, really, because with that action of reinvigorating people, but then also upon his death, he left us a bequest, which basically is how I was hired as an ED. And that, again, revitalized the organization to be able to have the infrastructure to continue. So yes, thank you, David. Thank you, David Peterson, for all he's done for SpeakOUT. Any other questions? Oh yes, Deb.
This is just one small thing, is that, since social media has, entered the media landscape in the last 20 years, do we feel that a lot is getting lost in collection building to have, fill in the gaps as time goes on? And are we missing something, that there isn't a continuation of this type of a program? And so, because everything is just much more unfettered now.
That's an interesting question. Joan, I would love your take on that.
Well, I mean, capturing, so I have sort of two thoughts on this. One is archivists. It was a lot easier to take care of paper than it is to take care of digital files. It is much easier to delete everything you own and lose everything instantaneously than it is to, we have books that are literally thousands or over 1,000 years old. Not us at the History Project. Our stuff is much more current, but there's a process in place for that kind of preservation. I think with so much being written and shared and kind of shouted into the void, it's created this interesting problem for archivists where we're like, all right, so what do we save? If you took somebody's whole email archive, for instance, 2/3 of it are junk. How do you deal with that? And so some of what we're doing, at least, is starting to work with organizations on their sort of digital born files, the way that people are interacting with one another. Meeting minutes are digital, correspondence is digital, that sort of thing. And there are tools to preserve social media that work much better on just websites than they do on social media themselves. And we've done a little bit of that community web archiving. Actually, an interest. I sent this to a student recently who wanted to know about the dissolution and then not dissolution of the Boston Pride organization. I sent them the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine with their first statement, and then saved on the digital on the Internet Archive, and then compared that to their current statement that says, what their mission is now. So that sort of thing is happening. But I think archivists beyond community archives are still wrestling with, how do we do this in a way that ensures that we're not just, preserving the stories of the most privileged among us, which is kind of how it tends to go. I think for the second part of that question about SpeakOUT and how SpeakOUT shares information now is really interesting. Because I kind of wondered, if you folks at SpeakOUT were going to do something like this again, would you do it?
With
Is
sharing
there
of the clips, you mean?
No, I mean, the kind
program,
of
producing a program.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an enormous amount of work. This is kind of a, idea shelves, what if sort of question. But yeah,
Well, it is interesting because, with podcasts being so popular now, a couple of people have said that to me. We don't have the capacity. Like, I would love to be able to do something like that, but we would need more than me. We're a one paid person operation. And so right now, I don't feel it's something we could do. If we had more of an infrastructure to the organization and more, committed volunteers, because I am so impressed with SpeakOUT TV at the level of commitment that the anchors had to have to do a regular show every week. And like you were saying, like doing meetings of coming up with topics, coming up with people who you're going to interview. That's a huge commitment.
It really was.
And really, really was. And I'm so impressed with that. And I think that is a difficult thing to achieve, that continuity and commitment. And but hats off to all of you for doing that for so long, and producing such a quality product. So and important for the community, something that was really important for the community to get that information. So I think it's fabulous. Yeah. So we're coming to the end of our hour. Thank you so much, Joan, for having this with us. It's really wonderful to take the time to appreciate the SpeakOUT TV and the history of our community together. Again, I'm going to mention that today is SpeakOUT Day. Feel free to head to speakoutboston.org and make a donation today in honor of SpeakOUT Day. It's we're doing the work every day out there, and we really do appreciate continued community support. So and again, to thank the Mass Cultural Council for helping us with our digitization project.
Excellent. I put the link to SpeakOUT Boston in the chat, and I mentioned at the top, History Project has an event on Monday, and then Pride Month is over.
Oh
yeah,
and
proud. So tired. And your events. Yep.
Yes, we have our event, Appreciation Night event at Club Cafe, Tuesday night, 6 to 9 p.m. We would love to, anyone is invited to, if you're a supporter of SpeakOUT, you're interested in finding out more about us, come on by. We're going to be socializing. We'll also be having a short program awarding our scholarships to LGBTQ plus youth, and thanking all of our members. We'll have a fun raffle with some great prizes. So it'll be a fun queer night. So come on out.
Excellent. And with that, I'm going to stop our recording. I'm just going to say again, thank you so much, Speak Out, for being here with THP. Thank you everyone for your questions and for your reflections on Speak Out TV. I'm really excited for us to be able to share the work that you have done and to continue to partner on the work that you continue to do. So yeah, everyone have a wonderful night and thank you so much.
And thank you.
Thanks, Joan.
Shout
Thanks,
out, Michael.
Hi, Valerie.